You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
Bitcoin, Ether, Ripple, Litecoin, and more. Cryptocurrencies and other digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments on everything from coins to tokens, futures, and even OTC options. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Akuna Capital. Known as the new wave in tech and trading, Akuna is a leading derivatives market maker in traditional asset classes. As one of the first trading firms to make markets on Bitcoin futures, Akuna is also proud to be an innovator in the cryptocurrency space. Through a collaborative flow of knowledge between developers, quants, and traders, Akuna designs and implements their own low-latency technologies, trading strategies, and mathematical models. To learn more about our rapidly growing firm, please visit akunacapital.com. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Crypto Rundown, the program here on the old network where we break down the exciting, extremely exciting over the past week, world of crypto trading. We're talking the options, the futures, the actual different tokens and assets across all the different venues, all sorts of fun stuff. We're going to break it down for you. Settle in. We got a jam-packed hour to dive into all this fun stuff and really carve it up for you. My name is, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network, coming at you from our regular live time here, 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern here on Monday, the 8th of April, and a lot of fun stuff going on. You guys know how to get us, of course. Get us live on the Mixler. Of course, get us on demand at your leisure via your podcast provider of choice, or you can grab it all via our mobile app. It's all there as well. I'm sure however you listen, you send in those questions, those comments. We do love to hear from you guys. And joining me once again on the old program, it's been a while. We're pleased to have him back. Andrew Quine, the senior trader over there at Akuna Capital. Andrew, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. And as you mentioned, a great time to come back onto the show. I think plenty to talk about.
Yeah, no shortage of things to sink our teeth into. So without further ado, let's do it. Let's get right on into the Bitcoin breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trading activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's break down the crazy world of all things Bitcoin over the past week. You know, Andrew, I don't know what it is. It seems like whenever we wrap up a show, that's exactly when Bitcoin wants to move, right after the show. Not during the show, not ahead of the show, so we have a lot to parse on the show. Last week, of course, we wrapped up the show last Monday, and then Bitcoin decided, you know what, we're gonna take off from there. What a week it was. You know, ever since this show launched at the beginning of the year and all throughout Q1, people have been writing to us, people have been listening, they've been looking, they're out there, they're looking for that bullish case for crypto. Hey, is it time to dip my toes back in? Should I be looking at the different cash versions out there? Should I be looking at the futures? Should I be looking at the options? Where should I be looking to put my attention and my capital to work? Is it time, or is it still just bear market time? Was this a flash in the pan? All these things were hitting people's mindsets, and of course they were sending it to us over the course of the last few months, and everyone's been waiting for a signal, something to tell them maybe things are changing, the worm is turning. Well, last week you certainly got that in spades. A massive, massive rally week. Bitcoin up not just 100 handles, not just a couple hundred handles, over 1,000. In fact, $1,100 from our last show. We were at about 41 27 last show time. Coming into this show, it's 52.71. So a big move out there in Bitcoin land. It kind of kicked things off. I was joking, but not too much, really. Right after last show, going to April 2nd is where we really saw the surge begin. It surged over 20% at one point in a single hour out there in Bitcoin land. A lot of people were watching that crucial level of the 4230s, 4236 seemed to be a level people had their eye on. Blew through that and continued surging up to the upside. Hit a high of about 53.45 or so. Not that long after there, and then it's kind of been settling off a bit since then. So just an impressive move. I also saw a big move over the weekend as well. Saw Bitcoin rallying nearly 5%. Beginning on the 6th, coming into the weekend, so adding over another $200 to the price there alone. So just kind of records almost wherever you're looking. A record amount of volume going up as well during the big peak, the big rally last week within a 24-hour period. $87 billion changing hands. That's overall in the full crypto space, so not just Bitcoin, but still a lot of volume changing hands. Remember, we've heard some people in previous shows questioning some of that volume, some recent reports in terms of what's going on, what's real out there, but still 10,000 foot level, a lot of volume changing hands, a lot of things going on. So let's get to that, Andrew. I'm sure you've been busy out there. By the way, I do hear there are some congratulations due for you. Did I hear correctly? Did you get married since the last time you and I talked?
Indeed. Thanks very much, Mark. Yeah.
So congrats or condolences, depending on how you look at that. But welcome to the club. But yeah, so it's been a fascinating week. I'm sure you guys have just been super active over there. What's your take on this recent rally? If you have any thoughts on what the heck is spurring it, because I've heard many different opinions on what exactly kicked things off, what that catalyst was in your viewpoint, I'd be curious. And then what kind of action, what kind of activity are you guys seeing on the Akuna trading desk?
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, I managed to get back into the office after a short honeymoon in time for all the action last week. So I think Monday night, US hours, everything kicked off. And as you mentioned, we had that rally of 24% in less than 50 minutes, which is pretty astronomical. In terms of catalysts, there's been a lot of news, a lot of people trying to sort of pinpoint exactly what caused it. There was talk of some people lining up orders across various exchanges, but there's no real catalyst as far as I can see. It's just one of these things where we've had an extended period of low volatility, and then a lot of leverage in the market, and we were just really primed for that big move once the move precipitates a further move in these cases. So in terms of what we've seen in the market, on the options side, there was some amazing trading, as you'd imagine. The market itself was quite slow to react on the vol side. I think probably the market was lulled to sleep a little bit because we've had such low realized volatility and low implied volatility since sort of that November, December period that we've spoken about previously. So we saw amazing trading on the tick, particularly, for example, the June 6,000 call on Deribit. Traded as low as at a vol of around 50 on that tick. And we're seeing that trading closer to 70 now. It's one of the most popular strikes by open interest. In terms of volume on the options side, Deribit has seen 3 record days over the last week, albeit off a very low base. So, we're still talking, I think their absolute record now is somewhere around 65 million notional. So it's still a very small market, but we're seeing really encouraging growth signs. In terms of the broader market, we saw ETH and the rest of the market follow Bitcoin, and we've seen continued tick volatility since that initial move on Monday. So in particular, Wednesday night in the US, Thursday morning Sydney time was quite volatile, but we haven't seen anything like that initial violent tick. You mentioned 5% move over the weekend, but given where vol's trading now, that's almost to be expected. So in terms of the vol surface, we've seen calls bid, although we're still observing a slight put skew in the longer dated tenors. there is still that natural flow to buy the put and sell the call that we've spoken about on the show previously, and that's reflected both in the OTC markets and on Deribit.
Yeah, it has been interesting to watch just what's been lighting it up out there. First off, you mentioned the vol. The vol is kind of a good starting point for that conversation because it's funny. People, I think they're lulled into it from trading a lot of equities and indices over the years. They're used to mostly downside moves translating into volatility explosions, and yet people forget movement is movement, volatility is volatility. Well, whether it's upside or downside, and certainly. The explosion we saw to the upside qualifies as some volatility. We were just talking on the last show how it seemed like vol had gotten somewhat anemic. Realized vol was down to about a 25, the 30-day realized on that show. Since then, over the past week, it's spiked up to over 65 now, so a 40 handle increased in 30-day realized volatility, which again is pretty much what you'd expect given the big moves we've seen out there. You were mentioning the Deribit options volume. We were kind of looking at that as well. Interesting stuff on the 6,000 calls. That kind of shows you in and of itself maybe we're in a different paradigm, a different regime out there when it comes to the mindset on Bitcoin now, because those 6,000 calls certainly weren't lighting it up not too long ago. Of course, they were very much a distant afterthought when we were flirting with 3,300 and it seemed like 3,000 was the next level everything was going to test. Yet looking at some of the volumes out there on Deribit, I was, options volume overall at least, we're seeing some levels here. And again, this data coming from their friends over there at SKU.co. They're on the show a few weeks ago, listeners. They have some great data. They're showing some numbers here, what I thought was kind of interesting. They're saying, the max, they're seeing the record on Deribit for options volume. Again, this is all in the notional. It's about 63.5 million. And today we're seeing about 31.6 million, so decent volume. On the 4th last week, which is one of the days kind of coming off the rally there, 14.2 million. On the 3rd, 23.1 million. The 2nd, which was the big rally day, that was the heavy day, nearly 50 million there. So that was the big day. The 3rd didn't really follow up with a lot, probably about half that volume. I thought it'd be a little bit more. Did it surprise you there, Andrew, that we didn't see maybe a lot more? Because we saw records in the futures. We'll get to that in a minute. Did it surprise you that we didn't see just an explosion of options activity there? And maybe you guys saw something analogous on the OTC desk over there for you guys. Were your phones lighting up as everything was hitting the fan and we were blowing through strikes to the upside pretty much for a period of 24 hours there, Andrew?
Yeah, we were very busy. I think to me it made sense a little bit, sort of observing the market. Obviously we did great volume on the initial tick, which makes sense. And then we did see a little bit of a drop-off on the 3rd and the 4th, which I think might have been a result of there's not too many market makers in this space, and I think the liquidity suffered a little bit on the move. So the markets were quite wide, and I think everyone sort of needed to take a little bit of a breather and reset. But we've seen the spreads tighten back up towards the end of last week and early this week, and I think the signs are strong. You mentioned we did over 30 mil notional. The market did over 30 mil notional, I should say, yesterday. And I would expect that volume to continue to be quite strong for the next couple of weeks.
And looking here at just, again, some of the data coming out of Deribit, they're one of the leading venues for a lot of stuff. I know you guys put up stuff over there. And looking here where the OI is congregating and aggregating right now. You mentioned that the puts are bid. That's kind of been the way. We're still seeing it here in the skew. You're right, looking at the June skew chart right now, and the puts are pretty aggressive. They get up to 110 vol pretty quickly, whereas the calls, it takes them about all the way up to the 20,000 strike to really reach a similar level of extravagant implied volatility. The puts seem to get, it looks like around the 3,000 level or so. I don't have the exact demarcation here. It looks like probably around 3,000, maybe a little bit less, 2,800, somewhere in that range, where they really start to hit the astronomical levels of volatility. Even then, astronomical, 110 is not crazy. We've seen a lot of your average biotech around in earnings or a FDA report could have much higher levels of vol than that. And going back to the open interest here, where we're seeing kind of the clusters of OI, this like the largest clusters are still here in May out there in Deribit, with the biggest chunk. Yeah, there's a big chunk of about over 20,000 in some areas here just in the May expiration cycle. And looking at their little scatter graph of where those which strikes are active from an open interest perspective. It seems like this kind of lines up with the skew as well. It still is clustered around the downside here with puts in the 4,000 to 3,500 to 5,000 range. Really looks like they're leading the charts with OIs north of 2,000, getting into the 3,000, threatening 4,000. You don't see anything similar really on the call side. I think the closest you have, which is a nearly at the money call now, it's like about close to 6,000, 5,500 or so, has about a little bit north at about 3,500, 4,000. Actually, it looks like about 3,500 on this chart. Now, again, the legend isn't exactly clear here, but looks like about 3,500 OI for this upside call strike. And that's really the highest one. Most of the size OI north of 2,000 is definitely on the put side, which is kind of backed up of what you were just telling us there, Andrew. Moving on to the futures, as you might imagine, good times to be in the Bitcoin futures biz, I guess, unless you're SIBO. What do you think? What do you think, Andrew? You think this news maybe has SIBO reconsidering? If we had waited a week or 2 weeks to cancel our futures, you think this maybe has thrown a wrench in their works, Andrew?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I'm sure it was a very considered decision, though, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them re-enter the market in some capacity. But yeah, I think I've listened to the show in recent weeks, and you've covered off on the fact that the CME really took a very strong lead there, and it was trending one way. So I think it probably made sense for the SIBO to sort of reconsider their offering, and I'll be really interested to see the volume data coming out on CME over the next couple of weeks. It should be really strong. Before we move off the options, actually, I was going to mention, whilst we've sort of seen that call skew start to come up, you mentioned on that smile, it still gets up to about 110 in the sort of the 2K 1500 region, and we saw a lot of interest in the June SEP 1500 2K region with quite decent sized crossing on Deribit yesterday around sort of between 100 and 110 vol. So I think it's just one of those things where there's always going to be that natural demand for downside protection, and a lot of people who are prepared to write covered calls. So even in times of violent upticks like we saw last week, expect to see just a natural put skew in the market.
Yeah, taking advantage of a little bit of a pop to get a little more for those calls, right? To get a little bit more upside, you could then turn around and sell to pay for your puts. 1,500. That's interesting. That's a pretty dire level of protection. So that blows through. Indeed. That blows through what we saw a few months ago here. So maybe that'll give some of the bulls a little bit of pause out there. But that's kind of lining up with what we're seeing here in the skew chart as well. There's that strong spike well north of the 100 vol level, and that's pretty much right around that level. So yeah, clearly all the bears aren't out of there, and people are looking to maybe roll some calls, maybe do some collars as a way to get some ways to pay for that protection. 1,500. That's a pretty aggressive level, I should say. Pessimistic, really, level of protection out there. Speaking of pessimism, there wasn't a lot to be found in the futures over the past week. It was pretty much rally home mode. Coming into showtime, the CME futures pretty much the only ones left, last of the Mohegans out there in the futures realm. SIBO's still trading out there, but they're not going to list them beyond, really, and relist them beyond June. So I think past June, we're not really going to have much. So they still exist. They're still out there, but they're very much withering and dying on the vine as we speak. The futures today coming in, the April future up over 200 handles, 205 over there in CME at 52.25. Coming into showtime, seeing similar levels out there for the other contracts. You got to go out to September before you really get a decent bid of about 100 points to 53.25. In terms of the volume today, another day, another ton of volume going up out there. Nearly 16,000 contracts just in that April contract alone, that front April contract. So very impressive volume. Remember, this is a 5X contract, so you're talking over 75,000 coins changing hands right there. And depending on how much credence you put in that recent data we've seen about how much of the volume is legit in the Bitcoin world, that could actually equate to a lot more than you potentially think. But that's not the record. No, the record for the futures came on the 4th, which is why I was surprised that we didn't see the options follow suit. I think your your explanation about the market makers needing a little bit of a breather certainly makes a lot of sense, given the fact that there aren't a lot of them outside of you guys, and B, they haven't had a lot of upside moves to deal with recently. So it makes sense. We blow through a few strikes, you need to reset. That makes a heck of a lot of sense. But looking at the volume out here, the record was 22,500 contracts set on April 4th. That's over 100,000, 112,700 to be precise. Bitcoin going up on that day. The last record before that was February 19th. That was over 18,300. So again, they've been hitting some good numbers out there. So it does kind of show a bit of a stark contrast between what's going on CME and what's going on in SIBO. Andrew, you mentioned you listened to the recent shows. We've had a lot of people weighing in recently about what they think was really led to the demise of that SIBO contract. A lot of people, when the horse race first began, a lot of people were pointing to the SIBO one as being more retail friendly, could really get a lot more smaller volume because it was a 1 coin contract versus a 5 coin. As the horse race played out, didn't really work out that way. We saw the opposite work out. The 5 coin contract really kind of run away with it. A lot of people on the show recently have kind of pointed to the fact that it was that settlement that they offered on the Gemini that really was a lot of the problems, kept the big players away. Is that kind of your take as well? Do you think it was the issues with the Gemini, or was it something else? What do you think really led to them kind of scaling back and finally opting to delist that contract?
Yeah, I think you touched on a few really good points there. The 5 coin contract wasn't an issue, or was much less of an issue for people once the market came back. I think at the height of the market, when we're trading at 20,000, there was a 100,000 notional contract, and definitely very chunky. But with the market pullback, I think the 5 multiplier wasn't an issue at all for anyone. And then I think, certainly some people had some concerns with the settlement of that SIBO future using the Gemini daily auction, which still trades relatively light volume. And then I think CME perhaps just have a better global reach and maybe slightly better distribution than SIBO too, which they're able to leverage in this case. But as I said, I don't think we've seen the last of SIBO in the space. I'm sure perhaps they'll come back to market with a rejigged offering some point later this year.
One thing, this show has been any indication just over the last few months, there are no shortage of exchanges willing to step into that void and fill the gap there in terms of crypto derivatives, futures, options, etc. So it seems like everywhere I go, there's a new crypto derivatives exchange popping up. So if SIBO wants to let that one run, other folks will definitely fill the void. It's interesting. Before we get off Bitcoin really quickly here, I was noticing this, which is kind of interesting here, Andrew. This ever since this show started, people have been hitting us up with, it's the bear market. The bear market is the longest bear market in Bitcoin history. When's it going to turn? Well, depending on how you define your bear market, this recent pop may have actually put us into a bull market, moving just from 27% from Tuesday to Wednesday of last week. Some people claim, broke its 200-day moving average. It's now officially in bull market territory. I don't know if we've reached that yet, Andrew, but still, maybe that's the sign people finally need it, right? That we're finally maybe officially out of bear market territory for the near term, which I think is a good thing for a lot of the crypto bulls who've been kind of hiding their heads. Now they get to pop up and shine a little bit, Andrew, which I think is probably good. Still guys buying 1,500 puts, obviously, on your desk. So it's not all sunshine and lollipops, but at least it's some interesting stuff going on out there. Speaking of interest, it's kind of funny. These headlines always pop up whenever there's a huge surge. We're seeing these now in Bitcoin. Maybe that in and of itself is a sign that the worm has turned out there. But people putting out the articles, as you like to see and usually see when there's a big move. Google searches for Bitcoin getting back up there. I think this particular one came from CoinDesk. A bunch of people were doing the same data. Looking at the Google Trends data, and once Bitcoin roared to life last week, and really when it surged up over 5,000, worldwide Google searches for just the basic search term Bitcoin spiked levels not seen since November of last year. And this is kind of you can file this in the headline of the week, I think, but it still is kind of funny to see just where the recent spike falls. It doesn't actually, if you know anything about Google Trends data, how they report it to you, they don't give you a really broad naked numbers. They give you a chart that kind of shows the range of interest, with the top, the largest, most active, most interest time period. The data point there is represented as 100, from 0 to 100. And then everything else is some percentage of that. So on this data point, which goes back, looks like the chart they have here goes back about 6 months, which isn't that long, listeners. But the data point for here, the peak was in November of last year, and that was the 100 level. And the recent last week got up to about a 90% of that. So pretty strong interest in Bitcoin. And what's interesting about this, we see this a lot with a lot of other marketplaces too. We see this for VIX. We see this for other things. We've done this before on the Options Insider. It's kind of a fun little data point to look in sometimes, which is how we discovered that Maine was, go figure, the top options destination for Google in terms of Google search interest. So go figure the things you learn when parsing this kinds of data. But I think it's more relevant, Andrew, for the crypto space because there is such a strong correlation between online searches and volume, and so much of it is going on in online exchanges and different venues that this type of search interest, I think, more directly equates to actual trading interest than what we're seeing in maybe some other marketplaces. Has that been kind of your takeaway as well? You think all this strong resurgence of Google interest in Bitcoin, Andrew, is partly sparking the trading volume we're seeing?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, we don't on the OTC side, we don't trade with retail customers directly, but a lot of the crypto brokerages that we speak to that do trade with retail customers, they've anecdotally reported huge spike in interest last week, and I think that's indicative of the uptick in Google search as well, and just interest generally. Mainstream media is back, very interested in crypto all of a sudden. We haven't seen those headlines for quite some time, so yeah, I think we'll see an ongoing interest from sort of a broader demographic over the next couple of months.
Yeah, it's always a good sign when everyone's getting back in the crypto, getting back in the Bitcoin space. Suddenly, you're right, the headlines are out there. It's getting a little more traction again, which is always fun to see. And it's always fun to see you guys asking us more about things beyond Bitcoin. So let's get to it and start exploring the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, where we talk about everything but Bitcoin, except for this beginning part where we break down the market cap. Let's look at the top 10 coins. Let's not even do top. Let's just do top 5, because once you get to the bottom of the top 10, it starts getting pretty low. Number 1, of course, Bitcoin up to $91.5 billion coming into Showtime. So that's a big move from where it was not too long ago. ETH, number 2, nearly $19 billion, $18.75 billion. Number 3, good old XRP with about $14.25 billion. ETH and XRP were kind of jostling for that number 2 spot for a while. Seems like ETH moving well into the number 2 seat now, leaving XRP a little bit behind. Not too much, but still, you're talking over $4 billion, the difference between the two now. Number 4, good old EOS, $5.75 billion or so, roughly coming into Showtime. That puts it, $5.75 billion. And then number 5, Bitcoin Cash with about $5.5 billion. Litecoin actually out of the top 5 now, number 6 with about $5.33 billion. And you get down to the bottom of the top 10. You get TRON number 9 with about $2 billion, and then Bitcoin SV with about $1.5 billion out there. And before we keep rolling, Andrew, I'm kind of curious. Another talking point a lot of the guests have brought up, has been kind of top of mind for a lot of people in the crypto space on the show lately, and just in the market in general. I'm curious to get your thoughts as well. Is this very controversially report put out by the Bitwise guys recently, effectively saying 95% of the volume that's getting touted out there, including market cap numbers like this, is effectively fake, which means the Bitcoin futures and other listed venues like that are much more relevant than people initially thought. I'm curious. I'm sure this probably was a big talking point around the Akuna offices the last couple of weeks. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Obviously, those guys have a bit of an axe to grind. They're trying to launch an ETF, but still, it's interesting data nonetheless. Well, what are you guys' thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the data, from my reading of it, it does look strictly correct. But I think if you actually take a more judicious approach, and most of the exchanges that people take seriously, the volume is real. So the Coinbases, the Geminis, the Bitstamps of the world, no one's accusing them of fabricating volume or any kind of wash trading or anything like that. So I think because people have the mentality of always wanting to use coin market cap as a measure, and because of that, there's a bit of a perverse incentives for exchanges to try and drive themselves up those rankings. And we've seen a lot of these new exchanges come online that have reported astronomical volumes, which that report rightly pointed out makes no sense when you look at the spreads and some of the other trading activity on exchanges. It just doesn't add up. So I think whilst it is that 95% number is strictly probably accurate, if you do then sort of filter that data that a little bit, past that data a little bit, it's probably not as dire as maybe that report makes out. Whilst we're on the altcoin universe, I should note that you mentioned EOS there, number 4 on the rankings at the moment. Coinbase have just announced this morning Sydney time, so a couple of hours ago in the US, that they'll be adding EOS to their platform. So EOS, obviously the ETH competitor, another smart contract platform. They've also announced they're adding Augur, which is the crypto prediction markets, which is a project a lot of people have been excited about it for many years, but hasn't really gained much traction yet. And then they're also adding Maker, which is the smart contract platform that issues collateral depositions. So that's more of that move to sort of decentralized finance too. So some interesting news there on the token front.
Yeah, the EOS stuff, we don't get a lot of user questions or things about EOS. We don't dive into it a lot, but you're right. It has moved quite a bit. It's up 1% just in the last 24 hours or so, at about $5.50. Of course, listeners coming into showtime there, which puts it in that number 4 spot out there. And you're right. These platforms, these venues, which are loosely termed as exchanges, really they're kind of like retail brokers with a little bit extra on the side. But they are opening the kimono a bit, starting to add new products. And we've seen that in the past. Look, that was really the big driver of the big infamous XRP spike a year and change ago, right? When just the rumor, I think it was that, Coinbase was going to list it. Just the rumor that drove it from 30 cents up to $3 and change. So these new platforms onboarding these different tokens and assets can really drive the value. And we're seeing that with EOS right now. Let's look at the altcoin universe, because it wasn't just Bitcoin that was moving. A lot of things were moving since last show. Let's start with our old friend XRP. This is one it's been almost glued to that 30-cent strike for the better part of the entire year. I mean, it gets up to 31 and change, it back down, but it's not really shown a lot of signs of life, not a lot of sparks, certainly not up to the 50-odd cent and beyond we've seen it do not too long ago. This week, it caught a bit of a lift, up about a nickel to about 36 cents coming into showtime. So a nice move for XRP, showing that it can move a little bit. That coin's been kind of under some pressure of late. We've seen, in the announcements, the JPM coin, a big potential threat to that. A lot of others maybe kind of looming on the horizon as potential competitors to XRP, which is probably why it stayed glued to where it was. But this past week, managed to break through to the upside. ETH, I know a big one for you guys over there at Akuna, Andrew. That one moving and shaking over the past week. Up 40 handles from our last show. It was around 140 on our last program, at 180 coming into this show. It was up another 8 handles coming in just today. Up nearly 13.5% just coming into today's show. So just big moves out there. Litecoin, similar. Litecoin, we talked on the last show, it's kind of been the record setter for Q1 in terms of percentage gainers in the crypto space in terms of the big mainstream coins. I'm sure there was some esoteric coin that trades a couple of times, and that one percentage-wise maybe did more. But in terms of the big, large, decent market cap coins, Litecoin was the clear winner for Q1, and doing well again this past week, up another 28 handles. It was around 60 on our last show coming in. It was now up to 88 coming into showtime. Actually off a little bit, off about 3% coming in just in the past 24 hours or so, about 3 handles, but still an impressive rally going on across these different products. I know, Andrew, ETH is kind of one of the other altcoin you guys really see a lot of interest in. What was that one light up the tape last week as well? And what are you seeing out there in the ETH realm, sir?
Yeah, it was particularly volatile. I think I kind of alluded to earlier that at one point it ticked from 180 down to 150 almost, and then popped back up to 165, all in the space of 5 or 10 minutes. One exciting development on the ETH side since we spoke last is that Deribit have launched their ETH options. So we've had strong demand OTC for quite some time now. So we think there is a lot of pent-up demand out there to trade ETH options. I think last time I was on, we discussed sort of a lot of those ICOs that raised in ETH and really did need a better hedging sort of function and didn't have that, or in many cases didn't sufficiently hedge their ETH. So we see a lot of demand there, and that market, whilst it's early days, it's showing some positive signs on Deribit too. So that's really exciting. The other thing that's occurring not only in the ETH futures, but in a lot of the other altcoin futures is they're trading at serious premiums now. So the futures are in contango, which is somewhat rare for the crypto futures. So this is on the I suppose the internet derivatives exchanges, we'll call them, but also we're seeing contango in the listed CME and CBOE Bitcoin futures, but it's really exacerbated. We've got so the June quarterly future in ETH on some of these online derivatives exchanges is trading up north of 5% relative to the spot. So make of that what you want, but that's potentially a bit of a bullish signal there too in not only ETH but in a lot of these altcoins that have derivatives products over the top.
No, that's right. We have noticed that obviously in the primary Bitcoin futures, but right, also in the other ones out there too, pricing in a bit of a premium going forward, which is, I think, interesting to see, depending on your viewpoint out there, but still interesting to see them pricing that in. And that's certainly, I like to hear that the ETH is really sparking to life. I know when you guys were coming on back in January, it was an area that was kind of nascent, but you were hoping would take off. And it sounds like that is the case. And it makes sense, just given the anecdotally what we see from the audience here. A lot of people, and in the industry as well, are used to be very interested in XRP. Seems like some of that has maybe diminished somewhat, maybe with the prevalence of new competitors out there has taken some of that, and ETH really seems to have taken prominence with a lot of them. That's probably why it's cemented itself firmly in the number 2 now in market cap, as opposed to jostling back and forth over there with XRP. Speaking of XRP, really quickly, there is some news. Everyone's waiting for the U.S. to finally approve some sort of ETP. But if you're overseas, and we know a lot of our listeners are, Andrew joining us from overseas, that's where a lot of the crypto space has to be right now, unless you're in the U.S. and want to go through a VPN. But seeing some new ETPs approved recently for XRP, for EU investors. These are going live there's ETPs for XRP and Litecoin going live on the Nordic Growth Market, everyone's favorite exchange over there in the Norway region. These were announced last Thursday. 4 of them, actually, 2 for XRP and 2 for Litecoin. Again, only available to pretty much to investors in the EU. But this is a global movement we're seeing of firms launching and trying to launch these new these securitized products that can allow a broader array of potential players to start coming in and trading these things in their existing securities account. They don't have to deal with a Kraken or a Coinbase or a Deribit or an Akuna. If they don't want to, they can kind of go the old-fashioned way and go through their existing securities account, which makes life a little bit easier for them. I know everyone out there is still waiting for the U.S. To get on board that train. So we'll see. In fact, I think we probably have some questions about that. So maybe without further ado, let's get right to it and answer some of your crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crypto questions segment. The name says it all. You have questions. We answer them across the broad spectrum of crypto, a lot of them Bitcoin, but we'll take ETH, we'll take, your XRP, whatever you want to hit us with. We'll try our best to answer them. You guys know how to find us on all the various outlets, or maybe you want to bother the Akuna guys with your questions, and then they could forward them to us or bring them on the show. Go ahead, at Akuna Capital on the Twitter machine is the place to go. All right, let's see here. Let's kick things off, Andrew. Nice and easy. This comes from WDBL. Doesn't really roll off the tongue, but c'est la vie. They are asking here, will we have weeklies in Bitcoin options anytime soon? I guess this answer kind of depends on the venue they're looking at. All right, Andrew, because a lot of venues out there are approximating the weekly functionality right now. I know you like Deribet's the one you look at a lot, and a lot of people like to look at. So what do you have to say here for our listener, WDBL, Andrew? If they want to get into the weeklies in Bitcoin options?
Yeah, you're right, Mark. So Deribet, which is probably the most liquid exchange for Bitcoin options, they do have weeklies. So there's plenty of trading in those weekly options. Obviously, there's some jurisdictional issues there with you've alluded to U.S. citizens unable to trade there, and a few other jurisdictions. But fingers crossed we see listed options sometime later this year too, and we'd love to see one of the listed exchanges, whether it's CME, SIBO, or a competitor, list weekly Bitcoin options. That'd be fantastic.
I don't think it's going to be SIBO anytime soon, but yeah, hopefully CME gets in on the game, right? They're lighting it up with the futures, and depending on who you believe, those futures are representing a larger share of the overall volume than you may have initially assumed. So the options are a clear next step. But I've been saying that for a while, so I don't want to beat that drum until we have more data there. Here's an interesting one. We got a ton of these, Andrew. I'm sure you guys probably did it, Akuna, maybe from your people on your desk calling you up, your clients, and maybe giving you a hard time because, of course, the big Bitcoin move. As I mentioned, we did the show last week on April Fool's Day. We kept you free of any fake headlines, anything like that. We don't do that to you here on the network. We're not going to give you some sort of fake headline and then trump it up and say, April Fools, you come to us for info. We're not going to lie to you. So when Bitcoin surged 10% immediately after the show, pretty much in the wee hours of April 2nd going into the day there, a lot of our audience wrote back to us. Like, this is one we picked, but there were a bunch of these. I think this was Sell Puts over there on Twitter. Good account, follows a lot of option stuff, talks a lot of option stuff. He wrote back, a lot of people did, said, April Fools. Everyone said that. They said, oh, April Fools, this is just a lie. Bitcoin's really just going to fall apart. Either that or the people who buy this right now are fools because this is just going to retrace again. A ton of people sent us that. And lo and behold, here we are. That was just the initial gap up. Here we are over the 5,000 handle now. So I guess it puts that into a little bit starker contrast who the fools were and who weren't. But still, a lot of people send to that. I'm sure you guys probably got inundated with that as well, Andrew. It was just unfortunate timing for the move. But I guess it worked out in the hindsight. If they thought they were fools for buying it, they look pretty good now.
Yeah, I mean, very, very ironic timing, and as I'm sure you're probably aware, the meme culture is quite strong in the crypto community. So I think a lot of people had a bit of a chuckle as to the timing of the move. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we've consolidated from that initial pop, and as you say, trading almost back at the sort of the local high at the moment. So yeah, fingers crossed the market consolidates and we go onwards and upwards from here.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned before with the Google search data, I think the correlation with the crypto community and online savvy, much more online savvy audience than I think just about any other financial market you're going to find out there. So probably you're right, a higher prevalence of memes per capita in the crypto trading world than there are in, let's say, cash equities. All right, Frank send this one in. Comment from Frank. He says he sends a link to an article and he says the bears are getting the heck out of Dodge. Maybe this is the bullish signal we've all been looking for. Is this a sign of capitulation? And he links to this article, which is titled "Trader Closes 34 Million Bitcoin Short Position Following a Reversal Signal." I think this comes out of Yahoo, or maybe there's relinking somewhere else. I don't know. But the link he sent was from Yahoo. And this says the amount of Bitcoin short positions on crypto. This came from this morning, actually. This is April 8th. On the crypto exchange Bitfinex, easy for me to say today, fell by about 20% this morning. There were nearly 23,000 Bitcoin held in short positions overnight. That dwindled dramatically following a 6,500 Bitcoin short order being closed. They were surprised that that didn't cause a larger spike. If you watched it today, it was a decent rally, but maybe not the initial spike some people thought, given the level of closing. That might thought that led to all sorts of skullduggery about hidden sell orders and things. But at the end of the day, the long positions did increase on Bitfinex to about 26,000. So there maybe someone did switch. But either way, interesting stuff here. This has kind of been a topic for a while, the degree of how you can short Bitcoin, how challenging it is. One of the reasons those 1,500 puts and other puts are still so bid in the Bitcoin options is shorting the underlying, whether it's in the futures or elsewhere, is a challenging prospect. CME, when they first listed their futures, they pretty much made it 1-to-1 from a margin perspective. So it wasn't attractive really from a margin or leverage perspective. And a lot of other venues have similar levels of kind of very strict controls on it. I think as you get more into the Wild West, those controls fall apart a little bit. But in the more regulated and, shall we say, reputable venues, that tends to be the case still. So trading it short, always a bit of a dicey proposition. A big upside move like this, yeah, I'm not that surprised that someone maybe got wiped out and had to close it out. I don't know, Andrew, are you with Frank? This is the sign of bearish capitulation, or maybe you're more along the lines of this guy just got caught on the wrong end and had to get the heck out of Dodge.
maybe the latter. I think though on the shorting, we certainly saw you alluded to some of the more Wild West venues out there. BitMEX is one that gets bandied about a lot, and we saw huge liquidations of short positions there. So just repeated $10 million liquidations over and over again on that move, and the open interest on BitMEX and some other similar venues took a real hit. So now we're sort of seeing that open interest start to rebuild, as the market consolidates a little bit. And, it'll be really interesting to see what we do for a move from here. But, yeah, certainly a lot of shorts seem to be getting wiped out on that initial tick. And it's that, those liquidations that then sort of spur the market and drive the market, which, happens on the short side too.
That's why we need more listed options out there. You don't have to deal with all this Delta One madness. You can just have the options if you want to sell some spreads or things. A little bit more risk mitigated than just riding that pony all the way up when it decides to spike over 1,000 handles in the course of a few trading sessions, which if you've ever traded short futures, that could be a challenging prospect. Obviously this guy got caught on the wrong. I don't know if I would read too much into this. Other than it does make a good headline, and it worked. You sent it in to us. We talked about it, so it worked for them. They got their clicks. But still, interesting stuff out here. And yeah, maybe in aggregate, this is maybe some interesting signs. As you mentioned earlier, the option skew still showing the bid is to the puts, and that's probably not going to change anytime soon. And of course, as we rally, people want to lock in those protections. I think I'd probably want a little bit more favorable level than 1,500, but hey, that's me. Let's see here. I think we got time. Let's got time for one more here, Andrew. Let's see what we've got here. We've got one from Lebex. Lebex asks, is there some reason why listed crypto derivatives went on the futures side first? Would have loved to see a security with options listed on it to start, as it would be more appealing to a wider audience. Well, I'm kind of with you there, Lebex. I've wanted options from the beginning. Kind of hard to have an option without an underlying, so I can see why they listed the futures first. But that's obviously getting back to what we were talking about before with the ETPs coming on XRP and others. People want some sort of securitized product they can trade around. It's just easier for the lion's share of the audience to get into it. They don't have to mess around with a Kraken or a Coinbase or any of these other venues, VPN into a BitMEX or any of that crazy stuff. They can just go to their normal securities account, open it up, say buy X, buy Y. And it's easy for them. So, yeah, I would have liked to see some options obviously listed before then. I don't know if a security, that's a challenging thing, obviously, obviously when you're talking about listing new products here in the U.S., you're getting into the regulatory scene, which is still fraught with peril for new crypto products. The SEC really hasn't clarified what their guidance is on this space, what they're looking for, other than they want more. Effectively, they want more volume, they want more liquidity, more of all of the above, and then maybe they'll consider some of these ETP proposals, which is why firms like Bitwise are trying to chop down those volume numbers and say, hey, only 95% of that, that's all fake, only 5% of that is real. That helps them get approved maybe a little bit faster. So that's been one of the key sticking points here with the main regulators. If you're talking securities, you got to go SEC, and the SEC still not on board, which is why they went to answer your first part of your question, why they went the futures route first, CFTC, a little bit smoother process in terms of the approvals. Obviously, CME and CBOE were able to do that kind of self-approval process, which gets a little bit into the regulatory weeds here. I won't bore you with all that, but they were able to do that with the CFTC's guidance. They'd be able to kind of self-approve, get the futures out there pretty quickly. You're getting into the options and securities and ETFs, then you're talking the SEC. That's a much more difficult prospect, hence why we haven't seen those other products get listed here in the U.S. So yeah, I'm with you. I would love to have seen something more on the security side that we can list options on, or options on the futures, either way, but hasn't happened so far. Andrew, I know you're not a expert on the U.S. regulatory scene, but any thoughts on why the listed venues? I'm assuming he means like a CME, a CBOE, that sort of thing, not like a Deribit, you know? Why they went the futures route first?
Typically, just settlement of most of the options. Normally people like to have an options market settle into the futures, so I think that's probably the reason. And obviously a lot more added risk and complexity that comes with options, and I think the regulators are still grappling a little bit with the D1 market, so logical that options sort of come second, just given that they're more complex.
They certainly are more complex. Unfortunately, Andrew, that music means we've come to the end of another epic journey through the world of crypto trading. Oh, what a journey it was. Bitcoin, EOS, ETH, everything rally-ho mode over the past week. Tons of volume in the futures. A little bit lighter in the options you may have wanted to see, but a decent spike on that initial pop on the second and third there. And then, the vol exploding, just records across the board, new ETPs lurking. A lot of fun stuff. Ton of your questions. Keep those coming. We do love to hear from you guys. Quite frankly, you guys are the reason we do this show. So keep those questions, keep that feedback coming. And Andrew, before we go, sir, if our listeners are intrigued, they want to hit you guys up on the Akuna trading desk, maybe put some stuff up OTC. Maybe they want to reach out. Maybe they're intrigued about this whole market making in the world of crypto or other products thing, and they want to hit you up about some career options. Where should they go? What should they do, Andrew?
Head to the Akuna Capital page. We've got a lot of roles open at the moment, so please check out our all our roles across trading and development. And then I suppose on the institutional side, if you're an institution looking to get in touch to trade some crypto derivatives, drop us a line at institutionaltrading@akunacapital.com.
There you go. You heard the man. Hit him up depending on what your needs are. The career stuff, akunacapital.com is the place to go. On the institutional side, as mentioned as well. Maybe you want to give him a follow over there on the old Twitter machine as well, just at Akuna Capital. That's AKUNA. No, it's not a word we usually encounter here in the States too often. AKUNA Capital for more information. And on behalf of Andrew and indeed myself, I thank all of you out there for downloading, streaming, subscribing, sending in your questions, listening live, all the fun stuff that you do. Keep it coming, and we'll see you back here next week with more of the Crypto Rundown.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.